We're going to be looking at the top 10 rookies from week 3, those guys who produced in fantasy football, who helped us in our lineups, those guys who surprised us. We're going to take a look at those guys today, but before we do, you need to click that subscribe button right now. Give it a tap with the finger on your phone. Click with the mouse. Stop missing out on these deep dives, these player lists, these videos. It's going to help you make those trades in your league, set those lineups, and grab those guys off waivers. But let's dig in. Let's look at these 10 players real quick. First player we're going to be looking at here is Devin Achane. He outscored all the rookies. He outscored everybody. 51.3 PPR fantasy points. We talked about him a lot this week because he was a stud. He went nuclear. 41% snap share, 22 touches, 233 yards, 4 touchdowns. He has elite speed. 4.3 speed, top end speed. He is explosive, fits well with this Dolphins offense. They should be using him for the rest of the year, if not forever, for the rest of his rookie contract because he fits well with this team. And it should be off and on with him and Mostert for the rest of the season. And he's a good get off waivers. He was the waiver wire dandy for week 4 as we get into this next week of football. Tank Dell's our next guy, 25.5 fantasy points, and we've been talking about him quite a bit over these last few weeks. 7 targets last week, 24.1% target share, ran 26 routes with an 83.9% route participation rate. And the Texans won this game against the Jaguars. Nobody was predicting that. Vegas wasn't predicting that with the over-unders and the spread. 136 air yards, so he was getting it deep. He was getting it often. And this is a wide receiver on the come-up. I think all the wide receivers from Nico Collins, Robert Woods, and Tank Dell, they're all going to have their moments throughout this year because they're all good and they're all getting volume. They're all getting opportunity. I think Tank Dell's a very good rookie. He's very nuanced. He's very quick. He's very smooth. He can get open, create separation. I think he's going to have a big role in this offense this whole season and going forward after that. He's a good get for the Texans. CJ Stroud's also doing some good things. Sam Laporta, one of the top tight ends right now in volume and production in the NFL and in fantasy football. 11 targets, 35.5% target share, 22.4 PPR fantasy points, ran 27 routes, about an 80% route participation rate, 87 air yards, 7.9 average depth of targets, and he's been a monster in fantasy. He's been running a lot of routes, seeing a lot of targets every week, and he's going to have some big performances. Usually you don't go after rookie tight ends, especially if they're drafted in the second round or later in fantasy, but he's breaking the mold. He's getting opportunity. He's seeing those targets. The ball's going his way. He's scoring fantasy points, and he was a high-end prospect coming out of college. This was a very good tight end class. We have a lot of good tight ends in this year's class that are doing some things on the field, from Kincaid to Laporta to Musgrave, and we'll have some more. Next, CJ Stroud. He's doing good things. He's feeding the wide receivers. 20 for 30 in pass attempts last week. 280 yards, 2 touchdowns. Had some volume. 20.6 PPR fantasy points. 252 air yards. So the volume was a little bit light and he was still productive. This team's going to be in game scripts. They're going to be pushing the football. They're going to be pushing the pace when the game script breaks because we've seen that. CJ Stroud's a fantasy option now. He was a late round pick or a guy sitting there on waivers. Now he's a fantasy option. He's going to have some games. He's going to have some moments. He's trending very well as a rookie. Next, Marvin Mims. And these numbers are breaking your brain right now. 16.6 PPR fantasy points, but he's hitting on this low volume here. 5 targets, 13.9% target share. Ran just 11 routes. 28.2 route participation rate, but had a 25.4 average depth of target. Like we said prior to the start of the season, he's a guy to stash because he's deep ball city. He's going to see a lot of air yards. He's going to see a lot of deep ball attempts. We saw it in preseason. You bring in one deep play, one deep ball, 60 yards or more, you got yourself a game there fantasy point wise. You got yourself some production that's going to help you out in fantasy. You bring in a couple, you catch a touchdown. Next thing you know, you got a monster performance. Doesn't take that much with a guy like this. You also see some bust weeks, but you should see the volume increase as we get deeper into the season. Remember, we only have 3 games played. Some of these rookies are starting to flash, do some things, which means we got a good rookie class right now. We have a good rookie class, a good batch of rookies here that are helping us out win some fantasy weeks. Next, Josh Downs, and it was his turn to shine with 13.7 points in this game, 12 targets, and a 28.6% target share. He was the guy seeing volume with Gardner Minshew in. He ran 41 routes and had an 83.7 route participation rate. That's routes, not targets. 72 air yards, 6 average depth of target. He has an 8 out of 6, so he's seeing a lot of short targets come his way. The short volume has to rack up for him to be productive. If not, it's going to be a long day for him. But as he gets more acclimated, gets more opportunity, we should see some plus matchups, some opportunity for him to score fantasy points off and on throughout the year. Should not be a consistent get, should not be considered as that, but a guy who has some opportunity to give you something later on down the road. Next, Zay Flowers. Similar light here. He's seen a lot of short targets too. 2.8 ADOT, but seeing 10 targets and a 33.3% target share. He's getting volume and it's getting consistent. We like him because he's consistent, getting fantasy points. 13 last week, ran 38 routes, 100% route participation rate. He's on the field. He's been productive from the jump. Very good wide receiver, very nuanced, and also has speed. We could see him get deeper targets later on down the line because that's what we saw from him at Boston College. Best year, he had an 8 out of 15. The years prior to that, 13 ADOT. So that is something we're looking at from Zay Flowers, some deeper balls going his way. Next, Puka Nacua, and this was a light game for him, as we know him to go off every single game he's in, but still 7 targets and a 21.9% target share. Like I said, talking about him last week in the must-start videos, I'll take that. I'll take that from a guy get off waivers. I'll take that. 12.2 PPR fantasy points. I'll take that from a free waiver wire get or a guy spent some fab on as a down game. 39 routes, 97.5% route participation rate. This game was ugly. It was a Jeff Fisher low-scoring game, but we still got fantasy points out of it. He was still getting air yards. He was still getting deep ball attempts. He was still getting targets. All things good for Puka Nacua, and I think this is going to be a long-term thing. Next, Jordan Addison. 8 targets, 16.7% target share, 44 routes, and 80% route participation rate. 9.3 average depth of target, 11.2 PPR fantasy points, and this is starting to be consistent because we got a lot of volume in the Vikings offense, and he should start seeing more opportunity in this passing game. More routes ran, a larger route participation rate, maybe more targets even though it's kind of high, maybe a higher target share in the near future, maybe a deeper ADOT. We have to see how the distribution of targets is going to be laid out here in the next few weeks as he develops and earns more of a role in this offense because he's a rookie. He's only got a few games under his belt. We should expect more out of Jordan Addison in the back 9 of the season. Now we have a batch of players who scored in the same range, and I did not want to just talk about Luke Musgrave or Rice and leave out the rest of the dudes, so we're just going to do it real quick. Musgrave's seeing targets, he's running routes, he's getting opportunity. He's a tight end on waivers, more than likely. That might be able to help you out in plus matchups. Rice is with the Chiefs, and he's been doing well this season for a rookie, getting some opportunity. Might have some splash weeks here and there because you never know which wide receiver is going to come on top in the passing game for the Chiefs because Patrick Mahomes likes to wheel it and deal it. Look at the box score and look how many wide receivers are getting targets, and they're just going to take their turns having that splash week. Michael Wilson, we've been talking about him a lot in the sneaky start videos, and he finally cracked double-digit PPR fantasy points. He's a guy to monitor for the rest of the season. I might have to do a separate video on him here soon because he's running a lot of routes. He's 3rd on the team in route participation rate. He's getting opportunity, and he looked good in training camp. Ronnie Bell, slot receiver from Michigan. This dude's gritty, and with Ayuk out, he took advantage of those opportunities. Bijan Robinson, down game for him, but a down game for him is double-digit PPR fantasy points. You're going to take that. You're going to take that all day because you know what? For a running back, a down game is usually 2, 3, 4, 5 fantasy points as the team flips away from the run game and just throws it more. But those are 10 rookies that we're looking at from week 3 who went off last week, helped us in our fantasy matchups did well, and now we got to look back and see what we want to do with them in the future. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you on the next video.